Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the grey. Today's video, we're going to do a little bit of fun wish listing, and today we're going to be looking at the Beasts of Chaos and what exactly I'd like to see from the Beasts of Chaos in Age of Sigmar 3rd edition. We're going to talk a little bit about new models we'd like to see, new War Scroll rights, new rules we'd like to see, new lore we'd like to see for the Beasts of Chaos as well. All of this just talking about generally what we're hopeful for and what we would like to see personally for Beasts of Chaos in Age of Sigmar 3rd edition. Without further ado, we're going to get cracking into my list, but I'd love to see all your ideas and thoughts in the comments below as well. So please do comment below, let us know what you'd like to see, and well, let's get cracking onto the list. Number 1, nice and simple, I'd like to see the monsters upgraded across the board for Beasts of Chaos. Now, they've got a ton of monsters in this army, and it's a really cool thing they have. They've got things like the Cockatrice, the Javislayer, the Cygor, Gorgon, and a whole host of other cool looking monsters. I'd just like to see them maybe hit a little bit harder in the new edition. Now, one thought I had for this was potentially maybe giving every monster war scroll its own unique monstrous rampage. Much like how we have unique command abilities for a bunch of different war scrolls in the game, I think unique monstrous rampages could be a really interesting part of the game. It could make monsters that little bit more interesting, give them sort of, I guess, these pseudo command abilities they get to use at the end of the charge phase that could really impact the game in a bunch of different ways. This not only would make monsters more appealing, plus we're giving them, maybe a little bit more damage potential on their basic attacks and stuff, especially for people like the Cygor. Could just make them a really interesting force on the table and make monsters in general throughout the game much more interesting as a thing to take in your army. Number 2, more Subfactions. Now, Beasts of Chaos do have a couple of cool Subfactions. I like the fact of generating the extra summoning point with the All Herd. I like the idea of the Darkwalkers allowing you to ambush the units otherwise not allowed to normally. However, what I'd like to see is more Subfactions sort of focusing around the different unique builds within the army. With the new edition, we've lost War Scroll battalions in the game as match play variations anyway, and I think we could have some really interesting sort of stuff to do by maybe bringing in some subfactions that sort of take what those battalions were doing and giving it to a bunch of models. For instance, I'd like to see a subfaction that encourages you to take Dragon Ogres and particularly makes Dragon Ogres better. One for the Warherd would be great like that, and even a subfaction that specializes in taking Monsters of Chaos would be really cool as well. These, I think, would just give you more options for your Beast of Chaos, get more different builds throughout the army, and incentivize you to take different models throughout the game as well. Maybe the potential one was like the monster one, which is something I really want to see pushed with Beast of Chaos, getting these weird, wacky, and wondrous monsters on the table, is different sort of abilities depending on what monster you've got. Maybe if your general's on the table, you can say it gets a particular type of monster to get a certain boon, but all monsters of that type. So say maybe one army might be Cockatrice heavy, one might be Chimera heavy, etc. There's some interesting stuff to play around with here, I think. Number 3, God-Marked Beasts. Now, we've seen in the Coalition unit section, particularly for the Disciples of Tzeentch, Bladed Khorns, and the other God-Marked armies, that you can get marked Chaos Beasts, or Beasts of Chaos rather, in those armies. What I would like to see, and maybe we can solve this with the aforementioned subfaction rules, is God-Marked Beasts within the Beasts of Chaos battle tome. So obviously we've already got the Zangor and Slangor, and maybe perhaps we do need Khorngor and Pestigor added to the army as extra units to sort of fully flesh this out. But I'd like to see you be able to take a subfaction or some sort of rules where you can mark your beasts. Maybe, they're just generic rules that every unit of Ungor, Gore, and Pestigor can take a mark. Or maybe it is a subfaction locked or something like that. But I think God-Marked Beasts are definitely something people want to see. I want to see it as well. And something that just gives a lot more flavour to the beast and gives you a way to run your army differently with the same set of models at the same time, So say you've got your Beast of Chaos army, you can run it in All Herd, and then you can run it in perhaps maybe the Tzeentch subfaction or the Slaanesh subfaction. It just gives you a ton of options to play around with. Number 4, Monstrous Arcanum Beasts. Now, Forge World released a ton of cool models over their time in Warhammer Fantasy and at the start of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. These bunch of awesome looking bestial monsters, things like the Praetor I've got pictured here and other ones as well. And I'd like to see all these monsters actually given the Beast of Chaos word instead of being just generic Chaos or generic destruction. Give them the keywords to allow them to fit into armies, and maybe, who knows, even get some plastic models of these out from the main Warhammer Age of Sigmar sculpting line as well would be really cool. But I definitely would like to see all these monsters. I mean, Beast of Chaos for me, the coolest part about it is being able to take all the weird and wacky monsters and just adding all these Monstrous Arcanum monsters to the mix would be great. Number 5, Morghur, the Lord of Skulls. Now, for those who don't know, Morghur is an old Warhammer Fantasy character, and he's actually mentioned in the Beast of Chaos battle tome we have now currently. He's actually mentioned as being some weird sort of deity that the Gave Spawn actually worship, and he's this sort of all-corrupter, this all-powerful, mutating beastman lord. And that's pretty much what he did in Warhammer Fantasy. He was a character back then that sort of used to corrupt things and turn everything around him into Chaos Spawn. It was a really cool model to have in the game and just sort of be turning everything into Chaos Spawn. However, I'd like to see him return as a proper model in Warhammer Age of Sigmar. I'd like to see a massive sort of corrupted bestial shaman model that represents Morghur on the table. He would be a really cool monster to have. Not only that, but he would give Beast of Chaos a true figurehead within the mortal realms. Something I think the army is severely lacking is like that true sort of leader to give them direction where they otherwise don't have it really. They sort of are just an army that is there to get beat up by everyone at the moment, and I think giving them a proper leader like Morghur would really sort of push them and give them that little bit more of a presence in the actual overall story of the mortal realms. Number 6, Mounted Beastmen Heroes. Now, this could be something as simple as a Beast Lord or Bray Shaman on a chariot. That's an old, cool model we used to have back in the Warhammer Fantasy days for Beastmen. However, I also think, Beastmen and Shamans in particular, sort of dominating monsters to their will and creating mounts for themselves would be a really cool thing to have for the army. Imagine this Beast Lord that's now dominated a Chimera, and so he sits atop a Chimera or a Manticore or a Jabba Slayer or something like that. I think would be a really cool look for the army, and definitely a bunch of models I'd be really interested in seeing. Number 7, I'd like to see the Turnskins narrative explored more. Now, for those who don't know, Turnskins are beastmen that were once human. They were either humans corrupted by some particular chaos magic, or they were born of 2 human parents, and they were beastmen born of those 2 parents. Turnskins, I think, are really interesting. There's a really cool Turnskin character in the Beastgrave novel, and there's also a cool character back from Warhammer Fantasy called Ungrel Forehorn, which I've got pictured here. I think they're just a really interesting sort of character to have in this sort of humans corrupted or humans birthing a chaos beastman is just a really cool concept and just shows how wicked and evil these things can be. The one in Beastgrave eats his own parents after they are sort of forced out of town for having a corrupted child, and the child actually ends up eating the parents. It's really messed up, but it's a cool concept to sort of explore, and I'd like to see it explored more in the narrative of the next Beast of Chaos battle tome. Number 8, Metal and Finecast models updated for the range. I mean, this one's pretty much a given for any range that has Metal and Finecast models. We want to see them gone and get new, nice plastic sculpts. Now, one thing of interest to me though is the Humble Beast Lord. I'd actually like to see a new plastic model of this guy, be putting him on like a 40 or 50 mil base and make him this more monstrous, massive creature rather than the sort of normal sized gore just with some cool looking armor and a cow on top of his head. I think we could have these much bigger beast lords to make them really these beefy sort of fighty heroes on the battlefield that would much more look the sort of place and the thought of what you get when you read about the narrative of how powerful and how brutal a Beast Lord is. So I'd like to see characters like the Beast Lord just sort of upped in scale that little bit. The Dragon Ogre Shaggoth is another one that the same sort of thing as well. And even things like your Doom Bull as well. Number 9, Beastman Gore upgraded, yes, again. However, I will say the new rule they gave to Gore in Broken Realms Kragnos was a really cool rule that definitely gave them some versatility. Gore are one of those units that's the mid-range unit, and they always suffer from not being as cheap as the cheaper option and not being as good as the better option. They feel somewhere in the middle, and as such really do neither job well and really don't fulfill either role. However, with the addition of the reroll charges when they come in from ambush, I really like the idea of some gore in the army. However, they do need a little bit The ability to reroll charges is nice, but maybe see those charges at something like +3 certainly starts to make them a really viable unit in the army. You perhaps maybe need to do something to get some rend into the army, into the unit, maybe when they take a single hand weapon, or maybe when they charge to get +1 rend, or something like that. They need just that little bit extra onto the war scrolls, just to make them, when they hit that charge, to actually do enough damage. They don't have to wipe anything, they have to sort of maim something enough that they're not going to get slaughtered on the way back. They definitely got some cool upgrades in Kragnos, but they need just that little bit more to push them over into that line to where they become a very useful unit to the army. And lastly, number 10, Beastmen Harples. I'd love to see this unit come back to the army. Harpies were a thing in Warhammer Fantasy. Both the Dark Elf army and Beasts of Chaos had Harpies available to them, and they were pretty much what you expect of that sort of generation of Fantasy's Harpies. However, I remember playing against some of my friends in their youth, which pretty much had Gores with wings, very reminiscent of the monkeys out of the Alice in Wonderland movie. That's always what they reminded me of, but I think this sort of concept could look really cool on some sort of gore-like Harpies, Gores with wings, some ungores with wings, as a cool little sort of fast-moving unit in the army. They could be in units of 5 and just, nice little harassing units that could be taken around, fly around, and just give something different to the Beast of Chaos and some new models. I mean, for me, it's just a cool thing. I'd like to see them come back. Don't know about everyone else. And so, what are your thoughts on Beast of Chaos? What would you like to see from the army in the future for Warhammer Age of Sigmar 3rd edition? What wouldn't you like to see? What do you want to see changed in your battle tone? What don't you want to see? Let us know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from everyone on all your thoughts and ideas on how to make Beast of Chaos that little bit cooler in the new edition of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Well, thank you all for watching the video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Also, while you're at it, why not come chat more with us on Discord? We've got a link in the description of the video below to our Discord server. You can come chat with me and other members of our fine little community here at Sinful Gaming. Lastly, we'd like to give a shout out to everyone who helps support the channel in various different ways. First of all, to our Patreon members, Christian Weir, James Soren, Chaos Spawn, AJC, Kenny Lowe, Outer and Shot First, James Crowder, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, Tim Newman, The Rising Ape, Cure Dynamic, Agu, Anthony B, MJ, and Dyna226. Thank you to, as well, our YouTube members, Green Roots Gaming, Fire Titan, Steve T, The Real Zeop, Chris Wallace, Turiot12, Vinny, and Loch Lorick. And a special thanks to our artist who does all the channel art for us, Lady Witchfox Art, thank you very much. And to our Discord moderator, Xmorphic, you do a fantastic job on Discord for us as well. Thank you all, everyone, for watching. If you'd like to help support on Patreon or YouTube member, or help support the channel in another way, you can do so by following one of the links in the description of the video to Patreon or YouTube members, or go buy some Sinful Gaming merch from our Teespring store, also linked in the video's description. That's it for today, everyone. Thank you again. Stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the Grey. Ciao for now.